Hey guys, Thrasher here. It's December 1st, and that means it's time for a brand new Sparking tier list. Let's talk about it right now. Okay, before we get into the list, I want to mention a couple things. One, this is the last time that we're going to do a single unit Sparking tier list. Starting in January, all the tier lists will be team-based. That's just because, as you're going to see here in a minute, there's so many characters, it gets really unruly, and it's not super coherent from here on out what unit is better than what other unit, because you can't look at two units in a vacuum. So you may see Unit A is higher than Unit B, and you may say, well, Unit B is better than Unit A. Yes, in a vacuum, they may be, but A is higher than B because of all the other factors around them, what team they're on, who they counter, what kind of equipment they have. So it's not just A versus B, even though this whole tier list is a tier list of single characters. With that being said, I want to give out 3 huge shoutouts. One to my Discord, one to Bebop, and one to Supreme Caramel, all for helping me tweak the list once I had created it to make sure that all of these characters were in the spots that they should be. And I'll make sure that there are links to my Discord, Bebop's, and Supreme Caramel's YouTube channels down below, so make sure you check those out. Okay, one last thing to know, all of the characters in specific tiers are not in a specific order. So just because you see a character to the left of some other character in the A tier, that doesn't mean that they're a better unit. They're pretty much comparable at that point. The only exception to this is all the characters in the Z tier are in order, and we will break those down one by one. With that being said, let's jump into this. Okay, first up is the F tier units. These characters have 0 situations where they'd be an optimal choice, and they're pretty much on deck for balance changes. So if balance changes were to come again sometime before we get any new characters or any other changes, these are the characters that you would see changed in most cases. And as you'll notice, most of the characters that were on last month's tier list at the very bottom have gotten balance changes, and they are higher up on the list. With the exception of Blue Spirit Bomb Goku, I think the only reason for that is even though he's probably the worst unit in the game or very close to it, everyone has him, so you'll see him a little more often, so it's hard for him to be at the bottom 5 of least used characters to actually get the balance changes. Maybe we'll see that this time around. Who knows? Let's move into the D tier of characters. The D tier of characters are also very bad units. There are very, very rare situations where you may want to use them, but they're still not optimal. You pretty much don't want to bring them to battle, and that's really all there is to it. Next up is the C tier. These are units that underperform all units up above them, and they have very, very rare situations where there is a case where you might want to bring that unit. For example, if you have one of these characters to specifically counter something that your enemy is going to do, but in most cases, 99.9% of cases, these are not units that you would want to bring on your team. Okay, next up is the B tier of units. These are units that are semi-viable filler units if you don't have any of the A tier filler units for whatever specific team you're trying to fill out. These units can be viable in PvP, they can do their job, but they are not the best option in most cases. Okay, next up is the A tier. These are the viable filler units. They are not the preferred choice in most cases, but there are cases where they are, and they are definitely viable in PvP. They can get their job done. A few things to take note of here. We can see that Pikkon and Kura, 2 characters that were absolute bottom of the barrel, are now sitting in our A tier after balance changes. That means they got a huge boost. One other thing to take note of is our first Legends Road character, the Kid Goku, is in the A tier as well. He is a reasonably good character. Depends on the team you run him on, but he is definitely usable in PvP. Okay, so let's move on to the S tier. These are all generally high quality units with good teams that they fit on. They are the preferred filler units once you've filled out your team with whatever Z units go into that team. 2 very large notable changes you'll see on the list here compared to last month is Android 16 has dropped out of the Z tier. That's not because he's not an amazing tank, he absolutely is, but his Android team has pretty much fallen out of the meta. And then the other major thing is that Captain Ginyu is now in the S tier, which in my mind is insanity, but that's just where he has to be placed. He does a ton of damage now. He helps buff the best or arguably the best character in the game, and I will have a little bit more to say about Captain Ginyu in a minute once we get into the Z tier characters. Also related to that, we'll be talking a little bit more about Lord Chilled, who is also in the S tier, but we'll wait until we get to the character that relates to those two to get to that point. Okay, Z tier. First up in the 8th slot is the Green Bardock. He is probably the longest lasting Z tier character in the game so far. he still holds up reasonably well stat-wise. The major thing for Bardock is the fact that he has that lock ability. So he sits on the Saiyan team, which is one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful tag team right now, and he has the ability to lock in any specific problem character. So say you're running Saiyans and you're against a character that does a lot of damage against Saiyans, you lock him in with Bardock, and then if Bardock can't kill him, you can switch out to someone else who can specifically take that problem unit out, and that's what makes him extremely powerful. Okay, next up in number 7, Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. Super Saiyan 2 Gohan is getting power crept a pretty fair amount at this point, but he's still reasonably tanky. He still does a ton of damage as an anchor unit. He's fairly low on this list as well, simply because the hybrid Saiyans are starting to fall quite a bit out of the meta at this point. They're pretty power crept. They don't have the utility that a lot of the other teams have, but I think that that will be fixed in the very near future as we get more into the Majin Buu saga and we get Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks. We also get Ultimate Gohan, but they're not here yet, so this is where Super Saiyan 2 Gohan has to sit in the 7th slot. Okay, so number 6 is Geneva. Geneva is still an extremely powerful unit that has a fairly good stat spread even compared to the most current units. He has an absolutely phenomenal ability to stop ranged attacks, and he is the reason that Regeneration is still a very viable team. With that being said, the Regeneration team is probably going to get stronger as we move more into the Majin Buu saga, but right now this is where he sits at number 6. Okay, number 5, and the newest addition to the list, Super Saiyan Bardock. He has absolutely insane damage potential, not just for himself, but for the whole team when you're running Super Saiyan units. If you are switching out with this unit and another Super Saiyan, that other Super Saiyan is going to absolutely bring the pain. I have seen people who are tap attacking for insane amounts of damage. So this is the character that really makes crit viable again. So the fact that he increases crit damage by so much and he increases actual crit for Super Saiyans, this is the point where crit is finally starting to scale. I've been talking about it since the game came out 6 months ago. We finally have the unit that's sort of breaking through the point where that is a viable stat. Beyond that, he just makes Super Gogeta an absolute monster, even though he already was before this. Okay, so number 4, Majin Vegeta. He has an amazing Ultimate Arts card, he has one of the best stat spreads in the game, and he is a massive damage dealer. Now, one of the great things about him is what you'll notice a lot of the damage dealers in the top of the Z tier have as an issue is they don't have a lot of health. That is not a problem for Majin Vegeta. He is fairly tanky compared to a lot of these other characters. His Ultimate Arts card does a ton of damage to the entire team. It will probably kill whoever you're fighting at the moment, and it will take most of the other 2 characters down to very close to 1 health, if not 1 health. So he can pretty much wipe the team out if you don't stop his final explosion. Now, you can stop his final explosion reasonably easy if you're prepared for it. You can stop it with a Rising Rush, you can stop it with a special move, you can stop it with an Ultimate Arts card, and you can also stop it with Android 17's green card, although that's very hard to do. He does have one more major drawback to him, and that's the fact that when he comes into battle, he does get a major damage buff, but he also increases the damage that all of your allies are going to take for 20 counts. Now, if you can keep him out there and you can continue to do damage and get most of that 20 counts done before you switch out to a new character, that's a positive, which makes it a good thing that he is a very tanky unit. Okay, so number 3, Super Saiyan 3 Goku. His damage potential is insane. He gets stronger as the battle goes on, and one more thing to really note here is he does a lot of extra damage to regeneration-based units, which is going to make him get even stronger as we get more Buu characters from the Majin Buu saga, which is going to be our next few banners outside of any specialty banners we get around Christmas. Now, one huge drawback to this character is that he is pretty flimsy. I don't know if I'd call him a straight up glass cannon, but he definitely is not a durable unit. So with that being said, let's move on to number 2, Super Gogeta. He was absolutely insane in the damage department before, but now that we have Super Saiyan Bardock, he is probably the highest damage potential in the game, period. He can absolutely destroy opponents. The only real drawback to this character is that he is also a little bit flimsy, and his green card is not the best counter in the game. You cannot combo into it, so that's unfortunate. Outside of that, he's an absolutely devastating anchor unit. If you are facing a Super Gogeta and you've killed the opponent's other 2 characters and all they have is Super Gogeta left, you need to be very, very careful because he can pretty much one combo most opponents at that point. Okay, so Super Gogeta is super powerful, but who's number 1? Final Form Frieza. Before the balance changes, he was a bottom tier or bottom to mid tier character. Now that he's got the status buffs and all of the other buffs to the character, he is the best character in the game. Now, some people will argue with me and say Gogeta is better. Here's the thing. This character by himself makes 2 different teams viable. I've seen Mono Yellow running at mid to high tier PvP and actually beating opponents even when they have red characters, simply because this character is so tanky and that team as a whole is now tanky. And I've seen a variant of the Frieza Force team. So you can run straight Frieza Force, you can run this guy, Captain Ginyu, and then any other Frieza Force character you want, and that will work. Another thing that I've seen with the newest banner that came out yesterday is the fact that you can run Lord Chilled, Captain Ginyu, and this Frieza, and they are borderline unstoppable. It's a pretty crazy team. So essentially the way it works is you have Chilled in, you're fighting. Once Chilled dies, this Frieza gets an 80% damage reduction against any Super Saiyan. So the only real character that poses him a true threat right now is Super Gogeta, who he can pretty much one combo anyway, but now he can't take damage from Super Gogeta for 15 timer counts. The only other 2 true threats to this character are Majin Vegeta, who I have also seen him essentially one combo, not quite, but pretty close, and he doesn't take a ton of damage from him, and Cell. Cell is in the Android team. They're pretty much off meta right now until they get some type of buffs. They're not a team that you will see super often. So he has no true counter that he's extremely afraid of right now. You can pretty much bring Final Form Frieza into battle and not worry about what your opponent brings, which makes him the top tier character in the game. Outside of that, with Captain Ginyu on his team, he has an extremely powerful green card. With the exception of 1, maybe 2 green cards in the game, his is the best. Telekinesis, now that it works at full range, is absolutely insane. If you have a green card in your hand as Frieza, you are afraid of nothing. And that's pretty much all I have for this tier list. You guys let me know down below what you think, where characters should be, where you think that things need to be swapped around, and we'll talk about it. And if you like this content, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.